Alright, so this is going to be take 2 of our little video here, starting on our 100 stacker. Mainly because the first take some absolute shitter started lagging the hell out of the server. So now that all the shitters are gone, I can safely re-record this video. So we're going to get started straight away. So we want to make a large sand compressor to do 100 sand at a time. And what we're actually going to do with this counter is going to make it auto at 4 seconds. So nothing really needs to change for a cannon to auto at 4 seconds. You basically just need to be not using these boosters here. Or these two at least. You can just use infinite boosters to auto on 4 seconds. So what we're going to do is to set up our SandCom, we're actually going to have a fairly similar setup to an infinite booster arrangement for, say, your power. But we are going to arrange it a little bit differently. So what we have here is we have our 2 boosters. We're just going to chuck an observer in the middle, standard setup, and then we're going to need a ladder here. We're going to stack this up a little bit. So at the moment I'm just planning out how we're just going to do this. 3, 1, 2, 3. You always want good exposure for your sand comp. Now what's going to differ between this comp here and a normal comp? You've sort of got 2 paths you can go down. For this compressor here, I think I'm going to use... I'll use fence gates. I much prefer using fence gates to using other blocks. Like chains and shit. You can... Basically what I'm saying is you can have either your dispensers with chains above them, sort of like that. Or what you can also do is you can go with a ladder on top of your dispensers, and then you just have fence gates on top to keep sand as an entity. I much prefer using fence gates. So we'll do fence gates for this compressor. So the biggest difference here between this and our infinite booster, and I guess the biggest divergence, is we aren't going to have the redstone on top here. What we're actually going to do is we're going to have our sand plate instead. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So the goal with our sand plate is we want to pick a nice round number that subdivides evenly. So we get exactly 100 sand. So I'm going to be doing probably sand. So if we make this compressor 10 long, and we have 2 rows of sand, we're going to be dropping 5 pieces of sand from each row. Move 1 south, set sand, sandstone, move 1 north. So 10 rows, or 10 long. Oops. Kind of cocked that actually, just a little bit. So we got 10 long, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 by 2, which is 20 sand, and then we'll need it multiplied by 5 to drop 100 sand. So that's how we're going to set it up. So I think we can just skip another booster entirely, and we can just do this using 2 boosters. So what we're going to do now is we're going to put some ladders above these boosters here, because this is where we actually want our sand to be firing out of, on top of these boosters here. You want it completely in line pretty much. You don't want any sideways exposure on your sand, because then shit can get a bit weird. So now we've got this set of ladders here. We're just going to close in this side of the compressor a little bit. And what we can do from here is we can actually start laying out how we want our sand plate set up. So to make sure that the sand doesn't fall through the fence gates, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to have that second row of blocks there. So you get this nice sort of channel almost, where you're going to be shuffling all the sand into the middle of. And we're going to start laying out these fence gates. So when this is shuffling from side to side, it's going to be moving everything closer towards the middle. So if you want a constant point where things are no longer moving, you need to use 2 of the same block. So this is going to shift right. It's going to move a fence gate into the middle here. If it shifts to the left from that position, it's also going to shift a fence gate into the middle, and it's going to keep everything shuffled into the center. So what we're going to do from here now is we are going to just add our pistons. And since we want it to move right first, we are going to have that piston connected to the soul sand, and we're going to have a very, very small air gap for this piston. So it's going to shuffle right, left, right, left, right, left. It's important that you do line this middle block up here with the boosters, otherwise you're going to get some misfires with your comp. So we're just going to stack that 9 along now, and this will be our sand plate. Stack 9 east. Sweet. So that's our sand plate now. So what we can do from here is, I'm just going to put that booster in. Actually, let's get these boosters wired up. So what I prefer to do for this sand comp is I'm actually just going to change the way in which I've laid these ladders out. So I'm going to shift all the ladders to that one there. And we're going to leave an air gap here, just so we can power this booster. But basically what I like to do is I like to run a repeater into these 6 dispensers here. And this will be a quick pulse comp, so you will need to quick pulse this compressor in order for it to work. But what that means is basically you can use this observer underneath here to power a line of redstone that you can start just here. And if you need to add more booster or boosters, you can just add repeaters on top and then do your boosters like that. This is just how I personally like to wire my comps. You don't need to do it like this. You can use target blocks or whatever else, but this is how I prefer to wire it. So what we're going to do from here now is we have that little set of boosters there wired up. So we are now going to wire up our sand plate. Generally you do your compressors in 2 halves. So you'll do your sand plate and your boosters in 1 half, and then you'll do the actual dropping mechanism for your sand in the second half. So we've got all these wired up, and we're just going to go 1, 2, and we're going to wrap this around. Now I'm going to be using a slab here, because if we don't have any blocks above where the boosters are, you're going to be just shooting sand off into infinity. You do need that wire guider for this comp. So we're going to use slabs. The reason why I'm using slabs here is you don't really want a full block there, because then you're going to have you're not going to be able to push the comp up in the y-axis. So what I mean by that is you're probably going to have some trouble getting it all out, but B, you're going to get a lot more flexibility if you're shooting it upwards and out instead of just shooting it straight. So you can actually raise your booster up a little bit higher, and it ultimately is going to be a little bit more TNT efficient. So what we're going to do from here is we're just going to wire up these 2 arms of the compressor, and we can now just add our clock in. So we're going to be using this clock here, and to do that we're just going to have a sticky piston target block there. So when this clock is in its retracted state, it's going to be powering that target block there, and there it goes. When it is in its extended state, it's going to be powering this line of redstone here. There's a couple of ways you can do this, and you can power this clock from different areas. I never really do this design for the redstone on top. I usually like having it underneath, because it leads to a lot more. I find it leads to a lot more flexibility. It makes your comp look a lot better. But in this case here, we're just going to wire it from the top. So moving on now. Just seeing now if we can actually make this a little bit thinner. Doesn't really look like it, to be honest. Nah, I think we'll just leave that as is. Oh, can we? Let's try something. Let's shift that to here. I'm going to place that block of redstone there. And then let's run some redstone like that. And place some there. And to keep this all at a constant height, I'm just going to add some slabs there. Because ultimately what we want to do after this comp here is we do want to have that final booster like we had on our little 10 stacker. We've got that booster there that shoots it all into the barrel for us. We still need that here. It's just a little bit longer. So just do this. And then let's just take a little line of redstone here. There you go. So that's your comp started up. Now, of course, you don't want this running 24/7. You do want this to have a, you do want this only to be working when the cannon is firing. So what we're actually going to do is we are going to run a redstone torch. I think it's into this block. Sweet. So you can see there that the compressor's stopped. Now the reasons for that is because we are forcing this piston to extend. It doesn't get to do that retracting motion there. And what that basically means is we can run a pulse extender into this. So that's only going to fire when the compressor is fired. So it's just generally nice for lag, and it's like less tedious when building pretty much. But what we can do from here is we've sort of got this bottom half laid out. What we're going to go ahead and do now is we're going to wire this up. So again, for this cannon here, we're going to be using a quick pulse in order for the observers to work properly. So let's just take some redstone in from that side there. And what we might do is we might actually take this line of redstone all the way through. And my sort of logic for this here is if we take this line of redstone all the way through, we can just hook this straight up into a piston tower for our booster just here. So we take that maybe there. And then we can sort of have a bit of a think, and I think there, if we have dispensers up just here and here, yeah, that should work. Sweet. So what we'll do is we will have this booster sitting on this block here. So we're going to shoot everything up into a slab, and to get more X velocity before we do shoot into the barrel, we'll just have the booster sitting on this block here, and we can just have our piston for this booster sitting here, and then we can just power it like that, and then we can just have it sitting in there. So now what we can do is we can raise this up a little bit, and we can actually lay out this booster here. So when that goes up to, let's just do 6 blocks at a time being, standard booster arrangement, dispenser. So when this pushes up, we just do 1, 2, and 3. And when this one pushes up, it will be 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. And then of course we need our reset. So we'll just add a block there, and our piston will go above that, and then that will be our reset there. Now we have our little booster wired up. I'm just going to fill in those blocks there, and we're just going to test it. So in order to properly have this thing working, you will need to quick pulse it, otherwise it will break. And I think what I'll do is it'll actually end up just double pulsing those dispensers at the bottom, which is just the TNT wastage. But if we fire that, yeah, there you can see that everything gets fired nicely. Boom, just like that. When I start making bigger comps, I'll wire it actually the way I want to, because I personally just fucking hate this clock at the top here. But again, it's just down to personal preference. So what we're going to do from here now is we are going to wire up our sand plate. So I talked very, very early on about these little circuits here. The pulse extenders, like the capacitors sort of thing. So what we're going to do is we're just going to have a capacitor there. So what's going to happen now is when we do fire that with a redstone pulse, you can see it will remain on for a certain amount of time, run out and turn back off, which is exactly what we want for this cannon here. Easiest way to do that is probably just run it out just like that. Give it a bit of time, and then let's run out the rest of the way. And of course, because you want a full signal strength going into that, because it will be decreasing over time if you don't, we'll just add another repeater there for the time being. So now when we fire it, boom, boom, sand plate starts moving, boosters go off, sand plate stops moving. That's perfect. So that's basically the bottom of our compressor done. So what we're going to do from here is we are going to need to add another circuit to drop the sand in. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this block here to power it. Again, this is purely down to personal preference, and I'm just going to power it off here. Sticky piston. Oh, not sticky piston. Slide block. And let's power it like that. Now, we need to be dropping our sand into this row here. This is 1. And then here for 2. So what I'm actually going to do here is, while you may hate bud pairing, it's also very, very handy to do. So I'm going to give this a little bit of Y separation. And what we're going to do actually here is we are going to use 2 rows of pistons powered by 1 line of redstone. And the way we're going to do that is we're actually just going to double stack these pistons like that. So when you update the top row of pistons, provided that you've got this bottom row bud powered, it's also going to simultaneously extend and retract. So what we have here now is we have a way for us to drop our sand in. Now you'll recall at the very, very start of the video, I did say you only wanted to drop 5 sand in, because the amount of sand that we're going to be dropping is going to be 20 per sort of per Y level, and you're going to be wanting a 100 stacker. So ultimately you are going to be wanting 100 sand. So this is going to need to drop 5 sand at a time. So I did mention a few videos ago that you could do certain pulse extenders using repeaters, and we're actually going to be using one of those pulse extenders here to help us fine tune this system. So it does get a bit finicky with this system here, because you might get this scenario where when this extends again, it's actually going to be pushing sand to the side, but we're just going to ignore that for now. It's going to add a torch, because again you want this permanently on so that there's somewhere for your sand to sit. And now you can see that both lines of pistons have extended. So if we get ourselves some sand, we stack this up, and we go 1, 2, 3, 4, 10. Hopefully this is wide enough. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Just like that. And now we want to be turning this torch off here. Or yeah, we'll leave it here for the time being. You'll also recall in the last, might have been the last video, the video before, where I was talking about order of entities, that you do want your sand rendering after your slab bust and before your hammer. Or not after your slab bust and before your hammer, sorry. After your slab bust, before your nuke. So basically you want this sand comp to start dropping sand the second your slab bust goes off. So I'll get more into timing this in the probably next few videos where I actually wire up the hammer and the slab bust. But for now, we're just going to have maybe 3 repeaters here. 3 repeaters is probably on the longer side, but just for testing purposes now, we're just going to have it like that. So when this raises, because I've got this powered off this booster here, it's going to raise up and we're going to power a line of redstone, which I want here. Now the reason why I have this redstone here is to make it super easy for us to fine tune this pulse extender here. So we're going to have that same system, and let's just add 2 1-tick repeaters or something. And now what we can start doing is we can actually start testing how much sand we're dropping. So provided that the sand plate timings are all good, I'm going to put some cobwebs here, and we'll just fire up this comp and see what happens. Boom, you can see the boosters go off, sand drops, and CI. Oop, CE. Okay. So we've got a couple of issues here. The first is that this booster is actually pushing that sand back over and it's landing on those solid blocks. And the second is I think this sand plate is taking a bit too long. Or it's stopping before the cannon actually fires. So what I'm going to do to rectify the first issue is I'm actually just going to put a row of blocks here. See if that helps. And I'm going to put a row of blocks here as well, just to ultimately help with timing it if that affects anything. So I'm going to fire that again. See if that helps. Oops. Okay, quick pulse it. Oh, I found the sand. Forgot the blocks to stop the initial velocity there. Let's fire that again. I'm changing the setup so I can actually slash fire it. So I think the timings were actually good for our little pulse extender there. It was just a skill issue on my end. So we'll fire that again. Boom. CI. No, CE. Yes. So you can see there in the bottom, we just cleared 20 pieces of sand. So even already, this is doing twice as much sand as that is. So what we're going to do from here is we're going to extend the length of this pulse extender. So it's only dropping 20 sand at the moment, which is 2 rows. So I'm going to just add a shitload of delay, and we're going to fire it again and see if that helps. CE. Wow, there you go, dead on, 100 sand. That's exactly what we want. If you do need more or less sand, you can always add more repeaters to this setup here. Or alternatively, you can start shaving ticks off. But since that's absolutely perfect for now, I'm quite happy with that. What we're going to do now is we're actually going to test this on a 4-second clock. So basically my planning for these videos is I'm going to make a 4-second 100 stacker, and then we're going to do a 3-second 256, and then we're going to move into a 2-second 384, a 2-second 256, and a 2-second 100 stacker. Probably with a 100 stacker first. So 2 secs pretty much a standard timing for a raiding cannon. So we're going to go with all of our cannons to 2 second after we finish our 250. Might actually do the 384 first, to be honest, and then could do like a 256, 380, a 256 2 sec, 100 stack at 2 sec, and a 384 2 sec. Probably something like that. But anyway, for the time being, you can see now that this compressor is working fine. So what we're going to do now is we are going to test to make sure that this does work on 2 second. Well, not 2 seconds, sorry, 4 second. So what we're going to do is we power this block here. And now what we're going to do is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 10 4 ticks repeaters, or 4 tick repeaters is 40 ticks. I mean, alternatively, what we can do here is we can actually do this, we might actually be able to get this cannon on 3 sec as well, but I don't really want to deal with that right now, so we're just going to stick with 4 sec. Boom. Okay. And you can see there, we actually just ran into our first little issue. Wasn't too bad, and we have just cleared entities and just found out that it is still 200 sand, but you did see this TNT here get shot up. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to place some blocks above that booster there, so that TNT can no longer get shot up. We're just going to try it again. See, boom, 200 sand. So that's absolutely perfect. So in the next video, we are going to be adding our power, and depending on how things go, we might be able to add our hammer as well. But this is your very, very first taste at a standard sand compressor. It's very small, and you will see that we'll get into much larger sand compressors. But basically, the underlying concept for this thing is going to stay completely true. It's only just going to get larger, and you're just going to set it up differently. So that's basically a quick introduction to building your first decent sand stacker. So I guess I'll be seeing you all in the next video.